Welcome to my channel. I would never have thought that this could happen to me. Don't repeat my mistakes. It all started on a Tuesday afternoon, one of those warm, sleepy days where the world outside the window seems to move just a little slower. I was in the kitchen fussing with a half-hearted attempt at banana bread, mostly just trying to distract myself. My marriage had ended quietly 2 years ago. The way a candle flickers out when there's no more wick left, no dramatic blowout, just will people. Drifting further into silence, I hadn't really let anyone in since that day my friend Carol called me. We've known each other since our boys were in preschool, and although we drifted over the years, we kept in touch enough to feel like family. Rachel, she said, her voice laced with its usual blend of warmth and concern. Can I ask you a favor? Her son Jesse had just come back from a year overseas volunteering or teaching. I couldn't quite remember. He was staying with her while trying to figure out his next steps, and she said he seemed distant. Would you talk to him? She asked. You've always been good with people who used to adore you, remember? I said, yes, mostly out of habit and kindness, not expecting much to come from it. Jesse had been a cute, wiry kid with a quick wit and a mischievous smile. Remembered him chasing fireflies in our backyard with my son. A van during summer sleepovers, their laughter echoing in the twilight. Now he was 27, and when he showed up at me front door later that week, I barely recognized him. He had grown into his height taller than I remembered, his shoulders broad and his posture casual but confident. His face had matured more angles. A bit of scruff on his jaw, but the eyes were still the same, warm and curious. He smiled when I opened the door a little hesitantly. Hi, Rachel, he said, brushing a hand through his dark hair. My mom said y'all wanted to talk. I waved him in and gestured toward the couch. She actually said you needed to talk, but either way, the banana bread just came out of the oven. We sat in the living room, the scent of vanilla and warm sugar curling in the air between us. The light filtered through the curtains in dusty slants, giving the space a golden hue. Jesse took a bite of the bread and closed his eyes for a second, nodding approvingly. This is amazing. He said I bake when I'm bored or emotional or avoiding laundry, so basically every day. I replied, and he laughed at it, started light, reminiscing about old times. The summer Evan broke his arm trying to skateboard off the porch, just his time in Thailand, and the kid Shed worked with, but then he got quieter, his voice lowering as he talked about feeling lost, like the world had moved on while he was out there trying to do something meaningfully. Came back and nothing fits, he said. My friends, my plans. Even my mom, she means well, but it's like she wants me to be 17 again. I nodded slowly. That's not unusual. Sometimes when we come home, we expect to find it the way we left it, but it changes, and so do we. His eyes met mine, and there was something searching there. Did that happen to you? He asked. Oh, absolutely, I said. After my divorce, I felt like I'd fallen off the map. He expected me to just bounce back into who I used to be, but I wasn't her anymore. Who sat in that soft quiet for a while, not needing to fill it. I could feel the shift in the air. Subtle but undeniable. There was something bloomy in the stillness, something tender. I saw how he looked at me, not with maturity or arrogance, but a kind of raw openness I hadn't encountered in a long time. Over the next few weeks, Jesse kept dropping by. Sometimes he brought coffee, sometimes just himself. We talked for hours about books, music, what it meant to start over. I hadn't laughed so easily in years. He listened, really listened, in a way most people didn't, not like he was waiting for his turn to speak, but like every word I said mattered. One night we were sitting on the back patio, the air cool and thick with honeysuckle. He was talking about a song that reminded him of home, and I was sipping wine, curled up in an old blanket you always made. Things feel safe, he said, even when we were kids. It wasn't just your house, it was you. I looked at him, then really looked the way the moonlight carved shadows along his cheekbones, the soft flutter of vulnerability in his expression. My heart stumbled in my chest. This is going to sound ridiculous, I continued, but I feel more like myself around you than I have in a long time. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to pull back, remind him that I was older, that I was his mom's friend, that this wasn't how these things were supposed to go. But another part, quieter, deeper, leaned in that night. Nothing happened, but everything had changed the next time he came over. I caught myself fussing with my hair before opening the door. I told myself it was silly, that I was being vain. But when he saw me and smiled in that soft, knowing way, I felt that same warmth spreading through my chest. There was no grand confession, no sweeping mint of passion, just a slow unfolding like petals easing open. After a long winter, one evening, it was raining. Jesse showed up without calling, soaked through it, laughing. I wrapped him in a towel, scolding him playfully. He caught me as gently as I turned to walk away, and I paused, breath catching in my throat. "Rachel," he said, his voice low. "Can I?" I nodded before he finished his kiss, was hesitant, at first tender, almost reverent. I hadn't been kissed like that in years. I was something precious. Me heart beats so loud, I was sure he could hear it. When we finally pull it apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "This feels crazy," he whispered. "Maybe it is," I said, "but it doesn't feel wrong." Days that followed were a mix of joy and guilt, laughter and long talks. Under the covers, we didn't hide from the truth, our age difference, the complicated connect through Carol. But we didn't let it define us either. We were just two people finding something we didn't know we were looking for. I didn't tell Carol, not yet. I didn't know how, but I knew this. I felt seen, alive, and for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. It wasn't a mistake. It was the beginning. After that, everything felt different. Mornings had a new rhythm. Jesse would slip out quietly before sunrise, leaving little notes on my kitchen counter. They weren't long, just a line or two. "You talk in your sleep. It's adorable. You make the best coffee last night." Wow, I'd save them in a drawer like little treasures, rereading them when the silence in the house started to stretch too wide. We kept it quiet, of course. Even had no idea Carol didn't suspect. To the outside world, I was just doing a friend a favor, helping her son adjust to life back home. But beneath that facade, something rich and intimate was unfolding. One weekend, Jesse and I drove up to Tekleming. We were each going on our own errands. We met at a small bed and breakfast tucked in the hills. The place was old, charming, with creaky wooden floors and ivy growing up the walls. We spent the entire weekend wrapped in a kind of quiet bliss. Walks through the woods, slow breakfasts on the porch, reading side by side in bed. The physical connection was there, of course, gentle, exploratory, deeply attuned. But what overwhelmed me most was the emotional safety. He didn't just want me. He wanted to know me. He asked about my childhood, my regrets, the dreams I'd shelved after my divorce, and I in turn listened to his stories of feeling displaced, his confusion over what kind of man he wanted to be. "It's strange," he said one night, lying next to me, his arm lazily draped over my waist. "I feel like I've lived more in the last month than I did in the entire year I was away." I turned to face him, brushing a strand of hair from his brow. "Maybe that's because you're finally allowing yourself to feel," he nodded, thoughtful. "Maybe, or maybe it's because of you. That weekend sealed something between us, a sense of trust that went beyond the physical, anchoring us in something deeper. But it also stirred the first real wave of worry in me. What if Carol found out? What if Evan Didi started to carry those questions like stones in my pocket, always there, heavy and hidden? And yet I couldn't stop. Wouldn't he had found something I hadn't even dared to want? And for now, that had to be now. When Jesse left my house that Monday morning, he did something different. He kissed me in the hallway, not rushed or secretive, but with a kind of quiet certainty. The sunlight was spilling through the windows, casting long golden stripes across the floor, and I remember thinking, this moment feels too beautiful to last. I touched my lips after the door closed, unsure whether I was smiling or bracing for the fall. Carol called later that day. "We're doing a little thing Friday. Nothing big, just some family and friends is here. Of course you should come." My stomach dropped, and I did my best to sound casual. "Sure. I'd love to. Want me to bring something?" "Just yourself." Oh, and maybe that banana bread even always liked us if... On cue, the past and present tangled themselves into a tight knot in my chest. The house was warm and loud when I walked in Friday night, the familiar scent of Carol's pot roast thick in the air. Jesse was there, across the room, laughing with someone. When his eyes caught mine, everything else blurred out for just a second, then it was back to normal. Except it wasn't, because now I knew what it felt like to fall asleep with his arms around me, to hear his breath hitch when I whispered his name. The dark, and here we were pretending we played our parts. Well, I chatted with Carol, hugged a few people I hadn't seen in years, even laughed a little too. Loudly, a story from Jess's Uncle Butte side. I was counting every moment until I could slip away. It was after 10 when it went out back for air. The garden lights were strung overhead, casting a soft glow over the patio. I stood by the railing, arms crossed, watching the moonlight ripple across the grass, and then I heard his footsteps. "You okay?" Jesse's voice was soft, carefully, didn't turn around right away. I'm not used to pretending. He moved beside me close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. I know me there. I finally looked at him. "This can't be just some escape for you, Jesse. It has to be real otherwise." We stopped tonight. His eyes didn't flinch. "It is real. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't." That's when I realized just how much he meant it, not with grand gestures or promises, but with the way he stood there, open, unafraid, and the way he didn't try to talk me out of my fear. He just stood beside it, holding space for both of us. He touched my hand, just a brush, but it was a reminder. We couldn't stay long out there. Not without raising eyebrows, but before Hedern to go, he whispered, "Come by tomorrow, please." The next morning, I told myself I'd say no, that this was getting too risky, too complicated, that by 300 p.m., I was parked 2 blocks from Carol's house, waiting until I saw her car leave. Jesse opened the door with a smile that looked like relief. Wouldn't talk much at first. We didn't need to. His kisses were slower that day, his shins more reverent. The world outside blurred again, and I let myself dissolve into him, body and soul. Afterwards, we lay tangled in the sheets, the sound of rain beginning to patter against the window. "I want to stop hiding," he said quietly. "Want to be able to look at you in the daylight and not pretend." My throat tightened. "That world isn't ready for this. Peril's not ready. Evan's not ready. What about you?" he asked. I turned my face to him. "You want to be ready. I just don't know if I'm brave enough." He nodded, understanding more in that silence than words could say. After that day, something shifted between us, not in a bad way, but deeper, more serious. We both knew it couldn't last in the shadows, and yet every time we were together, the shadows fell away. We started finding little ways to stay connected: a shared playlist, a private email, thread notes slipped under windshield wipers. The secrecy was maddening and thrilling all at once. But then came the dinner. Carol invited me and Evan over one Saturday for a family meal. She said she missed having the old group together. I should have said no. I should have run in the opposite direction, but guilt is a tricky thing. It can make you believe you owe people more of yourself than you can afford to give. Even was in high spirits, teasing Jesse as they caught up. I watched from across the table, my wine untouched, my fork aimless. Jesse didn't look at me once, not once, and that hurt more than I expected. At one point, I got up to use the bathroom, needing a minute to breathe. When I opened the door to return, Jesse was standing there waiting to talk. He whispered. I nodded, brushing past him down the hallway. We ducked into the laundry room, barely big enough to stand in, but it was quiet, private. His hands found mine. "I didn't want to ignore you, but I didn't know how to be around you tonight with all of them here." "I know," I said. I felt the same. There was a pause, then his eyes narrowed, thoughtful. "What if we told them?" I felt my pulse quicken. "Are you serious?" "I don't want to keep pretending." His grip tightened. "I want to build something real with you." I don't know how he'd even begin to explain. He'd cut me off gently. "Then let's figure it out together." We stared at each other, hearts pounding in that tiny room filled with the scent of fabric softener and the soft hum of dryer, and then That moment, it felt possible, like maybe the world didn't have to understand. Maybe it only had to be hours, but reality as a way of creeping in that night after dinner even pulled me aside as we were leaving. Hey, he said, frowning slightly, is everything okay with you? I smiled too quickly, of course. Why, you just seemed I didn't. No different, distracted. I forced a laugh. I'm fine. Sweetheart, just tired, but the look in his eyes told me. He didn't quite buy it. That seed of suspicion had been planted, Jesse, and I didn't meet for a week after that. I tried to convince myself it was. For the best that distance would help, but it didn't. I missed him in a way that felt physical, like part of me had been misplaced. When we finally did see each other again, it was in the park, early morning, coffee in hand, tucked beneath a sycamore tree. Like teenagers, I think Evan knows. I said, just nodded slowly. Then we have to be honest with him. With every Renee looked at him. This man who wasn't a boy, who wasn't just my friend's son, he was something unexpected, something real, and maybe the world wouldn't understand, but I didn't care anymore. I'm in, I said, whatever comes next. I'm with you. His hand found mine, and the path ahead, though still uncertain, no longer felt so frightening. We chose a quiet Wednesday evening to do it. I cooked dinner something. Simple pasta and roasted vegetables, something that felt neutral, grounding my hands. Trembled slightly as I stirred the sauce, not from fear, exactly, but from knowledge that our lives were about to tilt in a new direction. Jesse arrived just before 6, wearing a collared shirt and that serious expression he wore when he was about to say something that mattered. Even came in last, letting the door slam. Like always, tossing his keys onto the counter, already talking about his workday. I watched him in a kind of suspended stillness, noticing for the first time how much of a man he had become, how different he was from the boy who used to bring me frogs in shoe boxes and asked if he could stay up late to finish on more level of whatever game he was playing. Hey, Jesse, Heaven said, giving him a playful slap on the back. Didn't know you were coming too. Mom roped you into her cooking again. Jesse smiled, something like that. I caught his eye then, and I gave a slight nod. Now, before we lose our nerve, you sat down to eat. The air was thick with something unspoken, and I could feel the weight of it, building between bites and sips and small talk. Finally, I put my fork down. Even I said gently, we need to talk to you about something. Looked up, worry, okay? I glanced at Jesse, then back at my son. This isn't easy to say, and I don't want it to come as a shock, but it probably will, so please, just let us explain. Barry react, his brow furrowed. What's going on? I took a breath. We've become closer than just friends. There was a long, stunned silence. Even blinked. Then again, wait, what? Jess leaned forward slightly. It started slowly. We didn't plan it. We never mean to hide it from you, but we didn't know how to tell you either. We didn't want to hurt you or your mom. You're seeing each other, even said, his voice rising just slightly. Like dating? I nodded yes, for a while now. He stood up, pushing his chair back sharply. Jesus, Mom, he's Carol's son. He practically grew up in our house. I know, I said quietly. And that's why this is so complicated, but it's real. And I need you to understand that I didn't plan for this to happen. I didn't go looking for it, even paced a few steps. Rubbing the back of his neck, his voice cracked just a little. Do you have any idea how weird this is for me? I grew up with him. He's like a brother. I know it's hard to process, Jesse said, but this isn't just some fling. I care about your mom. Deep Liven shot him a look. Yeah, do you care enough to explain this to your mom? Jessa swallowed. I planned to, but you needed to know. First even turned to me, his eyes softer now, but still full of emotione. I don't get it. Why him? I stood up slowly. Because he sees me, he listens to me, and not like someone doing me a favor, but like someone who really wants to know me. Do you know how long it's been since? I felt that he looked away, chewing on the inside of his cheek. I didn't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now, I said gently. Just don't shut the door on this, not yet. He didn't reply. He just grabbed his coat and left. The silence after he was gone was like a wound in the area. Should go, Jesse said after a while. No, I said, touching his arm. Stay, please. Has stayed. We sat on the couch for hours, talking about everything and nothing treeing. To ease the storm that had broken over us, I laid my head on his shoulder with television. Flickering silently in front of us, I knew it wouldn't be easy. I murmured, but I didn't think it would feel this much like heartbreak. He'll come around. Jesse said he'll sink the top of my head. He just needs time. And he was right. The next week was quiet, even didn't call, didn't come by. I left him messages, careful not to sound like I was pressuring him, just letting him know I was horrific on Friday. He showed up at my door. I opened it heart-thudding. Can I come mine? He asked, of course. He stepped inside, standing awkwardly near the entryway. I've been thinking a lot, and I still don't get it, but I know you're not stupid, and you wouldn't do something like this lightly. I smiled, tears already rising. No, I wouldn't, and I've seen the way he looks at you. It's not casual. No, it's not he Alita K. I'm not saying I'm totally fine with it, but I'm not going to fight y'all in it. You're allowed to be happy. I hugged him before he could change his mind, and he didn't pull away that more. Then anything felt like hope. Telling Carol was next. That was a storm of another kind. We met at a quiet little cave halfway between our houses. She smiled. When she saw me, waved at the waitress, chatted about the weather. I waited until the coffee was in front of us. There's something I need to tell you, I said. She gave me a look, head tilting slightly. What's going on? It's about Jesse and me. Her brow furrowed. What about Jesse? We've developed a relationship, seeming more than friendship. She stared at me for a moment, lips parting as if to speak, then closing again. Her face went blanky. I'm sorry, I said. We didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. How long? She scared, voice flat. Almost 3 months. She looked away, biting her lip. And you didn't think to tell me? I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. She shook her head slowly. You should have told me. I know. There was a long silence. Then softly, does he make you happy? I nodded, eyes blurring. Yes. She took a long breath. Then they'll deal with that. She stood up, left a 20 on the table, and walked out without another word. I didn't know if I'd lost her for good, but if and only stopped lying to the people I loved, and that counted for something back home. Jesse waited for me, pacing near the window when I walked in. He committed me, instantly holding my face in his hands. You did it. He said, "Wait, did it?" I replied. That night, we didn't talk much. We didn't eat. So the hardest part was over. Or so we thought. Life had a way of testing whether the things we'd fought for were worth it, and that test was just around the corner. A few weeks later, life began to settle into something like a normal again, except it wasn't normal, not really. It was new, different, fragile in places, but real. He even started dropping by, morphed in. Not always to see me, sometimes just to grab something he'd left or to say hi, but I noticed he never avoided Jesse anymore. They didn't fall back into the easy rhythm they once had, but there was a quiet respect between them now, a shared acknowledgement that things had changed, and that it didn't have to be the end of the world. Carol hadn't spoken to me since the cafe at first. I told myself to be patient, that she'd come around, that decades of friendship had to count for something, but silence has a weight of its own, and eventually it began to feel like grief. On morning, Jesse and I were having coffee on the porch. The spring air was soft and cool, the kind that makes you want to take long walks and pretend the world doesn't carry burdens. Shakal, he said, as if reading my thoughts. I'm not so sure, I replied, reached over and touched my hand. You did what was right. You were honest. That's all we can control. I squeezed his fingers, but the truth lingered in the back of my mind like a dull ache. Not everyone would understand way. Started going out more slowly, at first a small gallery, opening a bookstore, reading dinner at a restaurant across town where no one knew our names. It felt thrilling and terrifying being seen. Sometimes people looked, sometimes they didn't. I never knew which stung more, judgment or invisibility. On evening, we went to a small music festival in a nearby park. A jazz trail played under string lights as the sun dipped low, casting long golden streaks across the grass. Jesse brought a blanket and we laid back beneath a tree, surrounded by strangers. I remember watching the way his chest rose and felt the lightness in his smile as he talked about a book. He was writing something about purpose and transformation. He didn't call it that, of course, he said. Was playing with ideas, but I knew he was trying to understand the shift inside himself, the one we were both still trying to make sense of, though. You think people ever really let go of what they expect life to be? He and Skeety turned toward him, I think. It's more like they learned to make peace with what he is. He looked at me for a long moment. That's what you've done, haven't you? He nodded. Eventually, it just took a lot longer than I thought it would. And then came the surprise 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Carol. I stared at the screen, my hand frozen in midair. Jesse looked up from the book he was reading. Is it her? An knotted breath caught in my throat. I stepped into the kitchen and answered. Hi, I said softly. Her voice was clipped, but not cruel. Can we talk? Yes, of course. We met in the park, neutral ground benches and dog walkers all around. She wore sunglasses, even though the sun was behind clouds. She didn't waste time. I've been angry, she said, mostly because I felt left out, like I was the last to know, like a fool, and never meant to hide it from you. I said I was just scarred. She looked away for a moment, watching a squirrel dart across the path. You're not the first person to fall in love unexpectedly. God knows I've made choices. People didn't understand. Her eyes met mine, but Jesse is my sonin. That's hard, I know, she paused inside, but he's also an adult. And if this is real, and it's not just some phase, then I need to make peace with it for him and maybe for you. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I blinked them back. It is real. It's more real than anything I've had in years. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. This is from Jesse. He gave it to me last week, told me not to open it until I was ready. I watched as she opened it, unfolding the single piece of paper inside. She didn't read it aloud, but as she scanned the page, her chin trembled slightly. After a long moment, she nodded. I still need time, she said, but I don't date you, and I won't stand in your way. I reached out hesitantly. She let me take her hand that night. I told Jessie everything. She read the letter. I said. She didn't say what it said, but it mattered. Hesmold's relief softening the tension in his shoulders. I just told her the truth, that I love AO. It was the first time he'd said it out loud. I didn't rush to respond, not because I didn't feel it, but because the weight of those words meant something. They deserved space. Later, as we lay in bed, I turned to him and whispered, I love you too. He pulled me close, his breath warm against my neck. You have no idea what that means to me. Over the months that followed, we stopped hiding, not in a dramatic way. We didn't post pictures online or make announcements. We just lived together some nights. We had dinner with Ian. Sometimes Jesse talked to Carol on the phone and told her about a project he was working on. The world didn't fall apart. People adjusted. Some stayed, some faded. But the core remained. Love doesn't always arrive the way you expect. Sometimes it sneaks in through a crack in the wall, reshapes your life while you're still catching your breath. And yes, there were still days I questioned everything, days when I caught my reflection and wondered what people saw a woman chasing. Something foolish, a woman in denial. But those moments didn't last long, because Jesse would come into the room lying about some little thing, or press his forehead to mine, quiet way of his, and I'd remember it. This isn't a mistake. This is a second chance. One evening, months later, we hosted Asmal dinner. Carol came, even brought someone new he was dating there, Slaughter. Music, warm light. At one point, Jesse took my hand under the table and squeezed it gently. I turned to him, smiled, and that meant surrounded by people who had once felt so far away. I realized something. G hadn't just found love, I had found home, the kind that comes after the storm, the kind you build brick by brick when you stop being afraid of who you are. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. So if you're out there feeling like life has passed you by, don't give up, don't close the door, because sometimes the thing you never expected, the thing you thought you could never allow yourself to feel again, might just be waiting on the other side of